I served dinner to people who hated me, including the man sleeping with my wife. By dessert, they were laughing at me like I was the entertainment, a pet who you can wipe your feet on. What they didn't know, I'd already drained the account, filed the paperwork, and hidden the cameras. That night, they laughed. The next morning, police knocked. She was upstairs getting ready for the last 45 minutes while I burned my fingerprints off rotating trays. When her family walked in, they barely acknowledged me. Just enough smiles to look polite and one "smells good in here" from someone who couldn't even look me in the eye. The only one who complimented the food at all was the 6-year-old, and he spit half of it into his napkin. But I didn't say anything. I just kept refilling water glasses and clearing plates like I was the help who lived in the walls. It was around dessert when the tone shifted from quiet disregard to open mockery. Her brother, Ryan, the guy who's been couch hopping between his mother's basement and women he meets at the gym, stood up, walked behind me while I was slicing pie and slapped my back so hard the knife nearly slipped. "Let's hear it for the house husband," he said with a fake cheer. "Man sets the bar so low, the rest of us can't help but look great." Everyone laughed. Hard. My daughter, Emma, who'd been on her phone all night, finally looked up and laughed louder than anyone. Then she said, "It's kinda true. Dad's like a wet paper towel, always there, but not really good for anything unless it's a small mess." My hand froze. I looked at her, thinking maybe she was joking, but she was already looking back at her phone. My wife, sitting at the head of the table, smirked and said, "That's not fair. He's more like a Roomba. Quiet, predictable, and only really useful after something spills." And that was it. The whole table roared. Her mom leaned into her wine glass, and her aunt slapped the table. Like I was the punchline in a family sitcom no one told me I was cast in. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Not because I was okay with it, but because I'd learned something over the years. If you stop smiling around these people, they ask if you're being dramatic. And if you answer honestly, it becomes your problem. So I smiled. And I cleaned. I cleared the plates, loaded the dishwasher, wiped the counters while they all migrated to the living room. Someone changed the music. Someone else asked if we had beer. I heard my wife saying something about how tired she was from prepping all day. I didn't even flinch. After they left, my wife didn't thank me. She didn't say anything about what was said. Just went upstairs, unbothered, and fell asleep within minutes. I lay next to her for a while, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what it takes to slowly become invisible inside your own life. The next morning she was cheerful, bright, like she hadn't spent the night before gutting me publicly with a smile. I waited for a comment, a maybe we went too far or Ryan was out of line. Nothing. Instead, she asked if I could take Emma to school so she could finally get a morning off. I nodded. Later that night, I made up an excuse to stay out. I drove around aimlessly for 2 hours before parking outside an old coworker's apartment and just sitting there in the car. No radio, just my own thoughts. I hadn't seen the coworker in 3 years. He didn't even live there anymore. I just wanted to be anywhere but home. Now fast forward to yesterday. I was already gone. I'd moved out quietly a few weeks ago. No fight. No shouting match. No big announcement. I just waited until she and Emma were out of the house one weekend, packed a single bag, and left a note that said, "I'm not doing this anymore." I changed my number. Got a small rental across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No one rolled their eyes when I walked in. No one made jokes at my expense. I didn't tell anyone where I went, not even my own parents. I told my boss I was taking PTO to handle a family matter and just disappeared. I didn't expect them to come looking. But yesterday afternoon I heard knocking on my door. I didn't recognize the sound at first. I wasn't expecting a delivery. I looked out the peephole and my heart dropped. It was her and her mother. Both of them looked wrecked. Faces red, makeup streaked, my wife's hands shaking as she kept pressing the doorbell like she forgot how buttons work. I didn't open the door. Not right away. I just stood behind it, listening and watching. After a minute of silence, I heard my wife say softly, "Please, please just talk to us." Her mother added, "We made a mistake. We didn't know, we didn't think, just talk to her." I didn't move. I let them stand there another 5 minutes before I finally cracked the door just wide enough to see their faces clearly. My wife's lip trembled. She tried to speak, but her mother cut in. "She's not okay. She's been falling apart since you left." That was the moment I realized something. It wasn't about the dinner. It wasn't about the jokes. It was about what came next. What they thought was going to happen. What they planned after I finished cooking and cleaning. They never expected me to leave. They expected me to take it. Forever. I didn't open the door all the way. I saw their faces red, teary, exhausted, and I waited. I waited to hear one thing that sounded like real remorse. Not panic. Not embarrassment. Not guilt from getting caught. Just actual regret. I didn't get it. My wife just stood there, trying to find the words. Her mother did most of the talking, which already told me everything I needed to know. I told her she took it too far, she whispered. I said it that night. I told her those jokes weren't funny. She was just trying to be. Trying to be what? I finally asked through the crack in the door. She blinked. Trying to be the center of attention? My wife's face twitched like she was holding something in. But nothing came out. No defense. No denial. Just silence. That's when I realized it was real. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some awkward moment they thought would blow over. They came because I left. Not because they missed me, but because they didn't think I would. When they realized I wasn't opening the door, her mom slid an envelope under it. Said, just read it when you can, and walked away. I watched from the window as they got into her mom's car. My wife was still crying. Not sobbing, not loud, just leaking. Like she didn't have the strength to pretend anymore. They sat there for a while before finally driving off. I picked up the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. I didn't even finish the first page before I tossed it on the counter. It was the same language I'd heard for years. I didn't mean it like that, and you know how Ryan is, and I was just tired that night. No ownership. No apology. Just a mess I was expected to clean again. That night, I sat on the couch with my laptop. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe closure, maybe ammunition, but what I found wasn't either. It started with Netflix. We hadn't changed the login. She probably didn't think I'd use it. But I logged in, scrolled through the profiles, and noticed something odd, a fifth profile. Named just me. We only ever had 4. I clicked on it. History was wiped clean. But I checked the continue watching tab. A few random shows. One stuck out, Tiny House, Big Secrets, a documentary series about people living double lives. Weird. That didn't feel like something she'd watch. Then I noticed the linked email for password recovery had been changed. It wasn't her usual Gmail. It was one I didn't recognize. I Googled it. The email was linked to a wedding registry site. Private but cached. The name on it wasn't mine. It was Ryan's. Her brother. My stomach dropped. I backed out. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself it was probably a joke, a mix-up, maybe even her helping him set up something for a friend. But something in me already knew. I checked our shared cloud account next. We had a family photo storage setup she never bothered deleting me from. There, buried in an old folder labeled taxes, were screenshots of Venmo payments between her and Ryan. All marked vague things like tickets, snacks, errands, hotel. The first was 2 years ago. The most recent was 3 weeks before I moved out. One included a photo of a hotel receipt. Room service. 2 meals. 1 king bed. I checked the address. A place just 45 minutes away, the kind of spot you go to when you're not trying to hide from the city, just from your husband. My heart didn't even race. It just stopped. There was no confrontation. No screaming match. No shaking hands. Just a long, slow realization that the jokes weren't jokes. I'd been the clown in a house full of people who knew the truth and thought it was hilarious. That's why Ryan could say those things in front of everyone. They'd all been conditioned to think I was the harmless extra. The placeholder. And honestly, I think I believed it too for a while. I called my lawyer the next morning. We didn't have much, just a house with both our names on it, one joint account, and shared custody of Emma, even though she was close to 18 and barely spoke to me unless she needed something. But still, I wanted it documented. Everything. The dinner. The affair. The hotel receipts. The payments. The emotional toll. I wasn't sure if I wanted a divorce or just a permanent separation. I didn't know if I wanted revenge or just distance. But I knew I wanted proof. I downloaded every piece of evidence I could find. I copied the files, exported the emails, even printed the Venmo logs and flagged the ones with sketchy descriptions. Then I sent her a message. Not a confrontation, just a Dropbox link, titled, I know. She didn't reply. Not right away. But less than an hour later, I got a flood of missed calls. From her mom. From a number I didn't recognize, probably Ryan. Then a text. Please don't do this. I can explain. It's not what you think. That's always the first line of defense. Not what you think. As if that hotel room was for a TED Talk. I blocked her. But it didn't end there. Because 48 hours later, my daughter showed up at my door. And she wasn't crying. She was angry. I expected tears. Instead, Emma stood on my porch with her arms crossed, jaw clenched, and earbuds still dangling from one ear. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? She said. That wasn't what I expected. She wasn't crying but furious. Like I had betrayed her. I didn't think you'd care, I said. And I meant it. She shoved past me into the house, dropped her backpack on the floor like she owned the place, and turned to face me. I had to find out from Grandma. She said you left Mom with nothing. I almost laughed. Nothing? She's got the house, the car, half the money, and apparently your uncle. Sounds like plenty. That's when it happened. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask what I meant. She just looked down. I knew, she whispered. That hit harder than anything. You what? Emma sat down. Suddenly, she looked 12 again. Small. Nervous. I knew about Mom and Ryan. For a while. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to piece it together. I caught them once. A year ago. We were staying at Grandma's during that big storm. The power went out. I got up to look for candles. They were in the guest room. She didn't describe what she saw. She didn't need to. I left. I didn't say anything. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Mom told me if I said anything, it would ruin the family. That it was just a stupid mistake. My legs gave out. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the same grain in the wood I used to clean while they all laughed at me. She said she'd stop, Emma continued, that it would never happen again. But then, it just became normal. And when you cooked that dinner, and Ryan made that joke, I knew you didn't know. She looked up at me. I'm sorry, Dad. I thought she'd stop. I really did. That night I didn't sleep. I walked the house like I was guarding something. Not because I thought anyone was coming, but because my body didn't know how to calm down. I went back through the Dropbox. The receipts, messages, timeline. It lined up. Emma had known for a year. My wife had been lying for 2. And me? I'd been showing up. Every day. Cleaning, working, taking care of people who were already halfway out the door. And somehow I still blamed myself. I got a call from my lawyer. Did you give anyone access to your shared account recently? She asked. No, I said, because someone just tried to withdraw $8,000. I felt my chest tighten. My wife, of course. I checked the bank. The savings account had been emptied, not just accessed, drained. A full withdrawal 2 hours after I sent her the Dropbox link. I froze. Lawyer said she'd start paperwork immediately. Emergency freeze. Financial separation. Retainer bumped up. But it didn't stop there. That afternoon, a manila envelope arrived at my door. No return address. Inside, printed photos of Ryan and my wife at restaurants, hotels, one at the beach from 2 years ago. The thumb drive. A single note. If you don't end this, I will. That was it. No name. No signature. Someone was watching them. Someone who wanted me to know. I woke up to a knock at the door. This time, Ryan. No warning. No text. Just him. Standing there with a smug little half-grin like none of this was falling apart. You gonna let me explain? He asked. I shut the door. He knocked again. Harder. I didn't answer. Then he yelled through the door. She wasn't happy, man. You know that, right? She hasn't been happy in years. That's what he went with. She wasn't happy. That's the line guys like him always use when they want your life, your house, your family, and your silence. You were a ghost, bro, he continued. She needed someone real. I nearly punched the door off its hinges. But I didn't open it. I recorded it instead. I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My wife's cousin, Jessica. We'd always gotten along, but we drifted when the family started freezing me out. She left a voicemail. I know I'm not supposed to talk to you, but I need to tell you something about that dinner. I called her back. What she said next hit like a freight train. That dinner was a setup, she said. They didn't just invite everyone for food. Your wife told us she had something to announce. I felt my throat go dry. She was planning to tell everyone that you were separating, that it was mutual, and that Ryan was going to start staying over to help with things. She didn't go through with it because her mom said it would look bad with you still playing waiter. Waiter? That's what I was. They were going to ambush me in my own house. Make it look like I was the one who walked away. That Ryan was stepping in as a supportive uncle. Every laugh that night? Every joke? That was the warm-up act. They were softening the blow. I sat alone after that call for a long time, thinking, not just about what they did, but about what kind of person plans a betrayal and waits to do it over dessert. After the call with Jessica, I sat in the dark for over an hour. I didn't even move. Just stared at the wall, trying to understand how my entire life had been repackaged into a script I didn't write, where my role was to quietly exit stage left while Ryan stepped in as the new man of the house. They didn't want a divorce. They wanted a replacement. And I was the disposable part. That night, I wrote a list. Names, dates, events. Weird moments I'd ignored. Like the time Emma told me Ryan had driven her to school even though my wife had said she'd done it. Or the time I found Ryan in the garage claiming he was looking for beer but didn't realize I'd moved the fridge 3 weeks earlier. These weren't just red flags, they were patterns. And one name kept showing up in places it didn't belong, Ryan. Day 5, the school call. The next morning, I called Emma's high school under the excuse of checking on her attendance. She hadn't been living with me, but I needed to know what had been going on while I was too busy cooking dinners and fixing pipes. I spoke to the front office. Standard check-in. Nothing unusual. Until I asked who had been listed as her emergency contact. It's her uncle, the woman said casually. Ryan H. He's picked her up several times. I nearly dropped the phone. Picked her up? I asked how many times. She said it was a few months ago, maybe 5 or 6 times total. But each time he signed the logbook, no questions asked. I'd never been told. My name was still on the list. But somewhere along the way she'd added him. Or my wife had. And then I remembered, one of those days my wife had said Emma was sick. That she picked her up early. But she wasn't home when I got there. They had lied. Both of them. And my daughter was stuck in the middle of it. I called Emma immediately. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was quiet. Why didn't you tell me Ryan was picking you up from school? Silence. Emma. I didn't want to scare you, she said finally. That stopped me cold. What do you mean, scare me? She hesitated, then said something I'll never forget. Because he said if I told you, he'd make you disappear like you were never here. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I was gripping the phone so tight it hurt. Emma started crying. I didn't believe him. I didn't. But he said stuff. Stuff about how he and Mom were gonna be together soon. That you were just in the way. She sniffled. He said I'd understand once things settled. That they just didn't want to hurt me. I felt like my chest was caving in. My brother-in-law had been picking up my daughter behind my back and threatening her in coded language if she talked. And my wife let it happen. Day 6, the lawyer's bombshell. I showed up at my lawyer's office first thing the next morning. I gave her everything, Emma's testimony, the photos, the financial records, the voicemail recordings, and most importantly, the threats. She looked at me differently after that. Like the case had shifted. This isn't a divorce anymore, she said. This is a protective case. She filed for an emergency family court review. Restriction orders. Financial injunctions. The works. Then she dropped the real bomb. You need to check your property deed. I didn't understand. Why? Because your wife may have already tried to transfer ownership. Or forged paperwork. Ryan's name has come up too often. I pulled up the county clerk records. My stomach flipped. A transfer petition had been submitted. A week before I moved out. Filed under family property consolidation. Signed with my name. Only it wasn't my signature. Day 7, police report, then the twist. I filed a police report. Forgery. Financial abuse. Coercion. The detective didn't roll his eyes. He didn't brush it off. He just kept nodding and taking notes. Like he'd seen it before. But before I left, he asked a strange question. You said your brother-in-law's name is Ryan H. Yeah. He flipped a notepad. Middle name? James? Why? He didn't answer. Just nodded, wrote something down, and said, don't let them in your house. At all. Change everything, locks, codes, cameras. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a cheating story anymore. This wasn't about a bad marriage or emotional neglect. This was turning into something dangerous. That night, I installed new cameras. Locked everything down. Sent Emma to stay with my sister in another state just for safety. I didn't even tell my wife. She didn't deserve that information. And the next morning? I got another envelope. No return address. Inside, a single printed sentence. Typed in bold. You're too late. He already moved in. The note said, you're too late. He already moved in. I stared at it for a solid minute. No return address. Just a piece of printer paper, bold font, center aligned, like someone was trying to make it official. I checked my cameras. Front door, untouched. Side gate, secure. Driveway, empty. Everything was locked down tight. But something was off. The back gate was open. I grabbed my keys, jumped in the car, and drove straight to the house I used to live in, the one she stayed in after I left. I hadn't been back since. My lawyer told me not to. But I had to know. When I got there, my stomach dropped. Ryan's truck was in the driveway. I parked a block away and walked up on foot. New curtain in the front window. A different wreath on the door. The lights were on bright even though it was only 3 p.m. I rang the bell. No answer. I knocked. Nothing. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I stood there for 10 more seconds, then walked around to the side. That's when I saw the moving boxes. Stacked in the garage. All labeled in permanent marker, living room, master closet, Emma's room. Only, Emma wasn't living there anymore. And neither was I. I went straight to the police station. Filed another report. I have reason to believe someone illegally moved into my home, I told the officer. He pulled it up. Looked confused. You said it's your residence? Yes. We're in the middle of separating. My name's on the mortgage. He stared at the screen. That may be a problem. My pulse started pounding. Why? Because according to this, the house isn't under your name anymore. I almost laughed. That's impossible. He turned the screen. I saw it for myself. The deed had been transferred. Last week, from John H. my name to KNR Family Trust. I didn't have a trust. I didn't even know what KNR meant. I asked for the documents. They showed me a scanned signature. It looked close to mine, but not exact. A second signature was right underneath it. Karen H. My wife. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. This time a text. You shouldn't have pushed her. Now you've got nothing. I didn't need to guess. It was Ryan. He had filed the trust paperwork. With my wife. They had legally moved the house into a shared trust 2 days before I locked everything down. And now, according to the county, I didn't own my own home. I called my lawyer in a panic. She picked up immediately. They forged a trust, I said. They moved the house. She was quiet for a moment. Then said I was afraid of this. I'm filing an injunction now. But listen to me carefully, you cannot go back to that property again. If they claim you're trespassing, it's your word against a recorded title. That night, I checked the thumb drive I was sent earlier, the one with the anonymous photos. I hadn't opened the video file yet. There was only one. It was grainy, night vision, clearly from a hidden camera. Timestamped 2 weeks ago. It showed my wife, in the living room, arguing with someone off camera. A man's voice, Ryan, saying, "He'll fold. He always folds." Then her voice, "He won't. Not this time." Then we take it, all of it. She didn't argue. She just nodded. I sat in my dark apartment that night holding my breath. The house was gone. My name was off the deed. My daughter was hiding in another state. My bank account was frozen for review. My wife was living with her brother in my home. And I was being told not to set foot on the one property I used to scrub clean on my hands and knees while they laughed in the other room. Then came the twist I never saw coming. The next morning, I got a call from a number I did recognize. My wife's aunt. The quiet one. The one who never talked much. She said, "I know what they did. I know why." I sat up. She continued. "It's not just about money or cheating. It's about inheritance. Your wife's been trying to get access to your late father's accounts for over a year. And Ryan? He was supposed to be cut out of his mom's will until your name showed up on something it shouldn't have." "What are you talking about?" She said it plainly. "They forged a will. Yours. One that gives Ryan power of attorney if you're mentally unfit. And Karen has the medical affidavit to back it up." I stopped breathing. "They're trying to paint you as unstable," she said. "That's why they pushed you so hard at that dinner. Why they wanted you angry. They were baiting you into a breakdown, something they could document." My chest went ice cold. "They're trying to take everything," she said. 2 days after I learned about the forged will and medical affidavit, I stood in a courtroom. Not for the divorce. This was different. Bigger. Emergency filing. I wasn't just up against my wife anymore. I was up against them, a legally partnered version of her and Ryan, operating as the KNR Family Trust. My lawyer laid it out to the judge, line by line. Forged signatures, fraudulent trust documents, property theft, financial coercion, and finally intent to declare me mentally unfit for personal gain. You could hear a pin drop in the room. The judge asked if we had evidence. We did. The video from the thumb drive, the photos, the transaction history, and then the audio file I'd never told anyone about, recorded during one of Ryan's rants through my door. "Bro, no one believes you anyway. You barely talk. She's gonna file the paperwork and it's done. You'll wake up one day and realize it's over. You lost." I had him. In his own words. The judge granted a full restraining order. Froze the trust. Opened a fraud investigation. Ordered them to vacate the house immediately. The order was served the same night. At 10:14 p.m., Ryan and my wife were pulled out of my house by 2 deputies mid-dinner, according to the report. Ryan tried to argue. Karen started crying. The neighbors filmed the whole thing. They're still watching it. The next day, I finally returned to the house. Everything looked smaller, colder. I walked room by room, taking it in like it was the first time. They had scrubbed my presents out, pictures gone, closets emptied, furniture rearranged. But one thing was still there. In the bedroom under the bed, taped to the frame, was a flash drive. Labeled, "For you if you ever grow a spine." It was her voice. A voice memo, maybe recorded during one of their late-night talks. "He'll never leave. He's built for submission." It's actually sad. You could set fire to his name and he'd come back holding a fire extinguisher asking how he can help. He thinks he's keeping the peace. But really? He's just easier to control when he thinks silence makes him strong. But that voice? Like I was a pet.